Hey, welcome back to the channel. All right, it's time for the February 2023 update to the Battlegrounds tier list. Remember, I try to update this between every season. One just ended. It is about to start in just a few days, depending on when you start this. I'm going to have the usual disclaimers. If you want to jump directly to the rankings, you can go to the timestamp in the description. Although I do recommend you do this because I'm going to do it as quickly as possible. Also, the legend is very helpful to helping you understand what it is that we're going to be talking about today. I tend to cover the various champions that are changing, or we talk about the evolving relationship in the classes. One thing I want to point, before we go any farther, I want to point out though, is that Battlegrounds, and we've seen this, is very much about deck construction and then you planning your bands based on what you're seeing and how you've constructed your deck. There is a lot of strategy to this. I don't think it was helpful to have a tier list for each meta, but we have a general tier list so that if you're interested in Battlegrounds, you're enjoying them, you want to get better at them. These are champions who we're finding it often makes a lot of sense to have ranked up, and they are often the basics or the building blocks of those decks, and then you adjust it for the meta. I've gotten a complete amount of advice, input, experience from the MCoC Illuminati. You can see them all linked there on the right-hand side of this page. If you decide to open up this spreadsheet, I highly recommend you check out all of their channels, not only as a way of getting better at this game, but of thanking them for helping me put this together. It's not just my insights, but theirs as well too. Then we've got the legend there. You can see that it is dependent on where you're seeing them, because we have this broken down between dual threats, attackers, and defenders. You can see the little fighting person there, the crossed swords, the bomb, the little video game monster, the broken heart, the dice, and the microphone, because I will be putting this out in about 2 weeks. I put the screenshot size out on my Twitter feed, if in case you're interested in that as well. You can follow me on Twitter. You can see that I post my monthly tier list. I think we're on like our 30-something edition. We're now on our 7th of the Battlegrounds tier list. Okay, let's go ahead and get into this. Here we go, starting with the dual threats. And it is important, make sure you see the attackers and the defenders too. As you see what we listed out, I've really made an adjustment in this one. The MCoC Illuminati, I went back and forth and really kind of tried to have a format, do the best we could to get these points across. And the defenders are just as important as the attackers and the dual threats, okay? And each champion is only listed once in their best possible tier and category. All right, now we really are gonna get started. Okay, tier above all, dual threats. These are champions, they're just almost always in there, right? They're almost always in your deck. The big building blocks, the way Battlegrounds is set up, they're there. We've got Doom, Rintra, Sasquatch is the first one I'm going to talk about. I have very recently taken my own Sasquatch to rank 4. I had always thought of him as a defender, but as you know, I host these Battlegrounds tournaments and there's top players in the world, and I started seeing people using him offensively. It caused me to take mine to rank 4. I even did the video on it. I'm like, wow, he is very useful offensively in Battlegrounds, okay? I don't think I'll have an adjustment in my general tier list, but in Battlegrounds, the health pools and the way the defenders are often working out, I really see it with him. He's fantastic. And of course, biggest health pool in the game, in a way of minimizing damage when he is in, he's building up to his Wrath of Tanarak. And then when he's in the Wrath of Tanarak, he's a real problem to handle. Absorbing Man, this is our first use of the dice. And I want to make it clear, it's early, so be careful on this one. This is my prediction. I don't want you going and ranking them up fully on this. I don't want you doing that with any of these champions. Make sure you play them first, understand them, you see how it's going to work in your deck. But with him, I think we're going to take a couple seasons to really see. But the reason why I have him there is I do think he is a bit of a menace on defense. Additionally, a lot of the defenders that we see in Battlegrounds, like Terraxes, he's going to rinse them. And so I think his prowess on offensive, his offensive use is there for us in this game. He's not just a good attacker in general, but in this mode, the way people often have their deck set up, and I do think he's going to be a problematic defender. You'll see Science, it only has one dual threat. A lot of that has to do with deck construction and the way we're often seeing decks build and the way the mode is about. Overseer is the one who's really holding out. I'll talk about a little bit more as we go through this list as to why that is and what I'm talking about with deck construction. Skill. It's almost surprising given how the decks are that there are that many, but that shows you how good they are offensively. And then Kingpin, huge health pool, right? Fury, 2 lives. Mole Man can be awfully difficult to fight. Got the immunity, shrugging the debuffs, all these sorts of things. And then Elsa the bomb. And I want to point that out. That's recoil masteries, right? So many of us have fallen for the Elsa trap. So sometimes if you're running the recoil masteries, she can really be problematic on the defensive side if you don't have a mutant. On the mutant side, you can see we got Domino Bishop. Bishop was one of my first rank 4s. I really love them. Rank 4, SIG 200. And then Magneto, that's a recent change thanks to, I believe it was Not, if I remember correctly, brought it up. It's like, look, the way Battlegrounds is going, we're seeing less and less just pure nuke metas, like as fast as you can. If Titania is considered a good attacker and she gets to her SB3, and Magneto just turns off so many problematic defenders in this mode, and he needs to get to his SB3. Plus, the way he's built, he can sometimes be a decent defender, or you just can't take off too much life from him at once. Made a ton of sense. I might start looking to putting Magneto in my deck a bit more as a big problem solver and maybe a problem on defense. Thank you, Nah, for pointing that out. Moving on to attack, there are no changes. And then Cosmic, there's one change in Cosmic as far as the tier above all, and that's the null coming up. You can see I have the dice there, meaning like I'm pretty sure this is where he's going to be, at least for a while. I'd like you all to kind of like take it with a bit of grain of salt, though. You want him at that high SIG, I think, for sure. And then also, something else I want to point out, and this is in the Legends, is make sure you, for your defenders, you check out the defenders list, but also that you spec into the Inequity Mastery. It's going to help a lot when your defenders are putting a lot of debuffs on the defender, because they're going to lessen the attack value significantly, which is going to make fights take a little bit longer. And then, of course, as that's part of the scoring system, you will do better and better. But Null just seems like a problem causer. The only reason I've got the dice there is like I want to make sure it wasn't this latest victory track meta kind of accentuating him, but I don't think it is. He does handle a lot, and he is a difficult defender too. Now we're going to get to the top shelf of the dual threats, and they're still the building block for me of my decks and those sorts of things. So I still think they're vitally important. America Chavez, her buff's going to go live in just a few days, depending on when you see this. I think there's actually might be a chance she becomes tier above all. The only reason why she might not, in my opinion, is one, I want to test it, but two, I think people have answers to her on defense. Her health pool is not exactly massive. And then offensively, I want to make sure she can handle the tough defenders, right? You're consistently seeing the same defenders over and over, and I don't know if she has enough utility, let's say, to really handle them to be in the tier above all, but I do think she's going to be a problem and someone you're going to be interested in having. I've recently taken mine up to rank 4, so you know I really do mean this. Spider Supreme, he's so new. That's why the dice is there, but really you want a champion who does not gain buffs. There might be some other strategies that are thought of and figured out, but for now, you're going to want that. He can be usable on offense, but I just don't like the play. Curious to see if B McG or maybe Karate Mike shows us some things, so I know they're both fans of that champion. iBomb's been moved down. He wasn't the tier above all, but he's been moved down, and that's why I have the little broken heart. It's the first one we're seeing. It's not their fault. They're almost too good, or it's the way the mode is played. And what I'll explain by that very, very quickly is, iBomb's putting all these debuffs on himself. So many of the high tier players, even me, are running this Inequity Mastery that I was talking to you about earlier. That's really hurtful to him. He can be a problematic defender. He can be a good offensive champion too. But I think you really want to make sure you're tailoring your deck and your bans and how you use him, your whole strategy based on using him. And so when you start to have that kind of like high maintenance, even though the champion himself is great, I think it's important that we reflect that. For now, he's going to be in top shelf. Maybe we'll see a few metas where it'll kind of get me to rethink it and put him back up there. I think he's fantastic. But I did want to point this out. Spot, there's a couple of big things. So I know a lot of big fans on Spot, but one of my concerns with him is in all of the videos I saw of him in Battlegrounds, he does have to take that initial hit. Now, Doom's doing a lot of hits through the block anyway, or a lot of damage through the block anyway. So I don't want to hold that against Spot too much, but it does feel like in places where you're wanting to use him, he may have to take some initial damage and then isn't really healing back up. When you're really going for that tip-top level Battlegrounds, those sorts of things are important. I do think he's going to be good. I do think he could end up in that tier above all. He clearly can be a problem on defense. You obviously do want to have a counter for him. That's already sounding like a good defender alone. So if he has offensive use too, he could get pushed up, but that's where I've got him now. If you've already got a spot and you feel strongly that I'm wrong there, please do let me know. Moving on through, our next champion with a microphone is Wolverine X. Now notice there was no skill champions. That is going to be a big thing that's going to come up. We'll talk about it more in the attacker part though. Wolverine Weapon X. I've also moved him down. And that's for a couple of reasons. I do think he's a good attacker. I'm not sure how many of the tough, problematic defenders, though, he's really handling. I've used mine maybe twice, 3, 4 times in competitive Battlegrounds matchups. And it's typically been because my opponent just didn't have another option. They were almost throwing the round, or I'd kind of backed them into a corner through my drafts and through who we were picking. And then he tore apart like a Falcon, if I remember correctly. Well, Falcon's not a good defender. So Wolverine Weapon X can be a good defender. Even if someone has like a Nimrod or a Omega Sentinel, they can still mess up. And Wolverine X is powerful enough to do a lot of damage and win you that fight. That's happened for me a lot of times. But there are often so many counters. I mean, everyone who's got a big, beefy Nimrod takes him. And that kind of just shuts down X. He's still worthy. That's why he's up there. But I don't want to overstate it. Moving on to the next one is Nightcrawler. Now, this is a new one, and this was at the suggestion of DLL himself. I've been talking about Nightcrawler for a while. In fact, I have a rank 3 Nightcrawler for this very thing. So I think it would take some investment. His evade is very problematic, and a lot of the skill champions, you know, if they have like a slow or something like that, their slow won't work against him. Now, some people know how to switch him, so really good players might know how to handle him anyway, but he can do some real damage on offense. If anyone has experience with Nightcrawler, please let me know. I feel comfortable with him in the top shelf. I don't think he's a tier above all, but I do think it was a really smart call by DLL to reflect this and that he's kind of a dual threat. Moving on to tech, there's been no changes in the top shelf there for tech. And then getting into Cosmic, we've got Hyperion. Hyperion, similar to Penny. Penny was the first one that really made me come up with the "it's not their fault" emoji. It's not his fault. It's the way Battlegrounds has evolved, and it makes sense. Mystics are so powerful in PvP. You would have to have played this game for a very long time. But there was a period of time where Mystics were the dominant class in Alliance War. The game's evolved. They've made some changes. It's a good thing. But we're now in these very short fights, very quick. I love it. And they're really strong defenders and they're really strong attackers due to Mystic Dispersion. They deal with buffs. And as we've talked about on this channel, they're always dealing with power. Well, Hyperion's a really tough defender unless your opponent has a bunch of Mystic champions that can nullify or handle his power gain. Then he's really not much at all. And that's kind of what's happened with him. He's still a very good attacker. There is a little bit of RNG involved, but I know some great players, hello, DLL and others, who can maximize Hyperion's talents, and they're absolutely destroying things with him. Because of that, though, and what I said about there's so many Mystics, I do think we need to reflect that, lower him a little bit. Gore's buff will be going live. I think he might be very powerful. Thing is, I think he's going to suffer a little bit from what I just talked about with Hyperion. He's got all these buffs, and he doesn't like punish you for nullifying them or what have you, and we even have neutralized champions now. So I don't know how often you're going to be able to really use him super well as a defender without you really trapping your opponent, because it's possible, it's probable, they're going to have quite a few strong Mystic attackers in their deck and then be able to use them against your Hyperions or your Gores. But I'm very excited to find out because I do think Gore got a nice buff. All right, moving into our pure attackers. Now, I've talked to you about, like, I think the dual threats are the building blocks, but attackers and defenders, as I continue to evolve, my knowledge and understanding of this mode, I think are just as important. As you can see, this kind of reflects a little bit of what we're talking about with the decks. You see so many Mystics listed and a ton of skill. We'll talk about that as we get through here. No changes in the Mystic attackers tier above all. One change in science, Titania has been moved from a dual threat into attacker. And that's really, again, to reflect what I said is champions are going to be listed where they're at their most optimal in their category and tier. And she's a tier above all attacker for sure. We're seeing that used. She does have a little bit of defensive use, and she used to be in the dual threats. That's why she's got the little fencing person emoji there. Actually, I think that's the wrong emoji. Okay, it was the wrong emoji. She needed that defensive one because I do think she has some potential defensive use, and you'll see that with a lot of those science champions. The reason why there's so many science champions like that and they're not in the dual threats is that, again, just like a lot of decks have a ton of Mystics, they also have a lot of skill champions as attackers, and the skill champions often counter the science, which is why a lot of these science champions are now listed as attackers and not dual threats, because you can place them on defense, but there's a good chance your opponent's going to have Hitmonkey, Crossbones, Valkyrie, Falcon, Spider-Man Stealth, and so on and so forth. We want this tier list to make as much sense as possible and be practical so you can get out there and make your rank ups. Moving on to skill, and I want to talk about all 4 of those champions at once, because there's some similarities there in that they have the ability to just kind of get around nodes or defenders. Crossbones, Falcon, and Black Panther obviously can just totally reduce the ability accuracy. And what I'm seeing is when difficult nodes are thrown at us, or that they're trying to make it challenging due to the nodes in the meta, Crossbones, Falcon, and Black Panther to a lesser extent can just almost laugh at it, because they're like, we'll just turn that off. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And they're still doing tremendous damage while they do that. Hit Monkey just does, Crit Monkey just does so much damage, handling things, one of the toughest defenders in the game, making an absolute mockery of it. And then Valkyrie does it in a different way by just hitting block. So unless there's a node that ends up saying like hits in the block do damage back, command, don't do that, no one will enjoy it. She's really almost, again, getting around, but in her own unique way. So that's why they're up there. They're phenomenal, and they definitely are in the tier above all for the skill attackers. Shang, Black Panther takes a little setup. Masakre is not just hitting into the block, but I think it was Bitter Steel. I saw a lot of really cool stuff from Masakre, even in a victory track meta that really didn't seem to work well with Masakre. He made it work. Moving on to the mutant champions in the tier above all, Archangel, it's the same thing as what we just talked about. Just turn off the node, laugh at it, and still do incredible damage in the process. Kitty Pryde can be a tough defender if they don't have the right counter, or if maybe they mistake and try to punish a special too early or hit her in the miss or something like that. She can catch some people off guard. So that's why she's got the potential defensive emoji right there. And then Omega Red does have the recoil thing to be in the tier above all 4 attackers. And then you can see the tech list there: Sparky, Ghost, Doc Ock, Rock Raccoon, and Cosmic, and CGR, and Surfer. I don't think there's any surprise there, but those are the attackers as we head into February here, 2023. All right, now let's talk about the top shelf attackers. These all can still be great, but it's really going to be more and more meta dependent for them to really shine or something like that, right? We've got Clairvoyant, Wong, Symbiote Supreme was great in this last meta. Dr. Voodoo, in Science, Red Hulk, Miguel, Spider-Man 99, and Wasp. But our first one we're really going to talk about is Mantis. Now, in the last video, I was very excited about Mantis. I did get her, played her, and I was like, uh-oh. And this is really a sign of what I'm talking about when I say, like, with America Chavez, in that they're powerful, and I see that. But are they actually going to help you beat the champions that you're often seeing at the high level, the defenders that are being placed that are actually causing the problems? Because anyone could beat up Falcon. Yeah, poor Falcon, but literally anyone can. But when you're going up against Kingpin, who's going to be shrugging the debuff that she needs, Terrax, where she's going to be taking the damage from his rock field and things like that, not going to help you beat up Penny Parker's. Doom's got all that crit resistance, armor. He's going to hit into the block if you make a single mistake. I'm just a little concerned, if you can't tell, about Mantis. I think she might be great. Nick136 put out a very good video on her, but I just can't in good faith tell you that I think she's deserving of a higher ranking right now. I think only time will tell. That's a phrase we say a lot in this game. And then that's it. Those are the only changes in the attacker tier. You can see them in Mutant, Tech, and Cosmic. Let's go ahead and move on to the defenders, who, again, I want to reiterate, just as important. Almost think of these as the 3 pillars of Battlegrounds. Okay, we're looking at the defenders now, and this is, again, I need to really thank the MCoC Illuminati. They really went back and forth and asked me a lot of challenging questions and made some great points. And that helped me really think of a better format to get this information across, because you have a lot of champions. You look at all these champions up here, and you can see almost every single Mystic one has the fencing person, meaning like they also have the ability to be used offensively, but putting them in the second tier of the dual threat, it minimized or didn't accurately reflect how powerful these champions are in Battlegrounds. So I think it's smart to really think of these as like 3 pillars: your attackers, your dual threats, and your defenders for your deck building. Mephisto, he's pretty primarily much a defender. He really is, okay? But he causes problems, takes a lot of time. He has an immunity. He does damage to the attacker just kind of by them hitting him. You know what he does. Man-Thing. Same thing, Mystic Dispersion, very tough not to send Man-Thing red. Has some immunity, some crit resistance, I believe it is, or doesn't take damage from the crit. Something with crits, he makes them not good. Can't think of it exactly right now. Mojo, right? We've all been there. You're all of a sudden degenning, the prompts go your way, but he's also good offensively, handling champions like Hulkling, who are very, very problematic. Mordo, B McG showed us how good Mordo can be. If you have any questions, go take a look. Ebony Maw, DLL, and I believe it was Campo both said, I've used him offensively. He's very, very powerful. Moving into science, Thing. There's just so many answers to Thing now. Thing's still very good, and I think he's still worth ranking. I have mine at SIG 200, rank 3. I'm not in a hurry to take him to rank 4 because the way I build my deck, he's often not someone I'm very excited about placing. I also enjoy using my skill ability accuracy reducer, so this is what we're talking about, deck construction and your own strategy, but he's a phenomenal defender nonetheless. Korg. I do think Korg is probably the best defender in the game. Maybe Domino, but it feels a very different way. But Korg is just that tough. He's just that tough. It takes time. He buys you time. He can do damage to other people if they hit him with the wrong attack and things like that. Killmonger. Killmonger does have some offensive use. He absolutely does. I think it's TJ who has shown us that. Tom Jarvis. He's phenomenal. Good defender. The last meta, there just was a lot of armor breakers, and that's the way you're going to want to, one of the ways you're going to want to handle Killmonger, but he deserves to be in this tier above all. Havoc, Storm-X, I think it's Bryce who has the rank 4, causes a lot of problems. All that glancing, no one likes that, right? And then she actually can be used offensively. In fact, I'll update this to show the little fencing person, because she can be used to handle some of the problematic skilled defenders with their shrugging and things like that. Havoc, again, Campo is one who showed me, and I think, can be used. Do you ideally want to use an attacker? Probably not, but spec into Inequity, and he's going to help you out a lot. Very good defender. I have mine at rank 4 as well. And then Iceman. I feel like I'm going out on a limb a little bit on this one, and so I don't want you to rank him up just based on this. He's going to get buffed. Now, it looks like he's going to have at least 3 immunities. That's a lot. Then, unless they change this, he's going to be able to handle evade for you, and they've got to up his damage at least a little bit to be respectable. That's all of a sudden sounding like a pretty good Battleground champion to me. Now, if they leave alone that initial damage he does, I believe it's in the signature ability that he does to an attacker or a defender or an opponent, I think you've got the makings of a tier above all defender right there. All those immunities, instant damage that you really almost can't do anything about unless you're immune to it. There's not exactly a ton of champions who are immune to it. But I think you have a tier above all defender. If they change that signature ability and the CCP doesn't know, we don't know as I'm making this video, then I don't think he'd be a tier above all defender, but I think he might be someone you're still happy you have in your deck. So keep an eye on that. Tech. Poor Tech. Tech has just been obliterated by how powerful the Cosmic class became in 2022. It just is. They have no great defenders because Galan and Hulkling destroy everything. If there's any champion who would maybe have been on there, it's probably Nimrod, but he's a dual threat, so it didn't make sense. Cosmic champions, Terrax, Cersei, both fantastic, both almost require counters in different ways though, right? For different reasons, if you know how to play them. And then they both also have great uses offensively. TJ has shown us that. I think it's Bitter Steel has shown us that too. Obviously MU8's Bryce has shown us that. So fantastic champions, great defenders, especially if you spec into Inequity with Terrax. And then they do have some offensive use too, which I love. They're just, I think, better known, better able to show how powerful they are if we have them listed as defenders. And then finally, like kind of the second tier, the top shelf defenders there, we've got Dormammu and Mangog in the Mystics. Dormammu with those nice immunities, that sort of thing. Void, MODOK, Miles, you can see they all do have some potential offensive use as well. Atuma, like, I wonder if he's going to get a tune-up. I've also been talking for a very long time on this channel that I almost wonder if there's like some long-form content stuff coming out. We got EOP and he wasn't part of it, so I don't know. But I thought he was going to be a better defender than he has been. In a recent video, I did talk about how to defeat him, and people used that strategy to defeat him pretty regularly. So that was interesting to see. He can cause problems though. He did get me some kills and that sort of thing, but not as much as I would hope out of a rank 4, I think SIG 160 Atuma, before he's even been in the Future Crystal. People really learn how to fight him. Moving through there, and I think that is it for all of this. So that is the full tier list. As we talked about, really you want to pay attention to the dual threats, the defenders and the attackers, having a nice balance in a way that's up to you, your strategy, your attack plans, who you're going to ban, and then build your deck around that. And I think this is a great list for generic, I'd like to get better at Battlegrounds, or I'm looking towards the future. I want to have as many as good champions as possible that when I know the meta, I don't have to do a whole bunch of new rank ups. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out the MCoC Illuminati. They're so incredibly helpful. Let me know what you think we got right. Let me know what you think we got wrong. Take care.
I hope you either learned something, were entertained, or even better, a little bit of both. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.